Now in the Bay Area, we've got a little bit of good news in that even though we've been bouncing along the bottom for the last year, look at what's happening with our multifamily vacancy. Throughout the Bay Area, almost every single market, even the North Bay, East Bay, has 5% less vacancy in their multifamily product. Along the peninsula, we're talking about 2%. We're talking about rental rate growth of 20% in some markets over 1 year time. Now, there's been a lot of people sitting on the fence waiting till housing hits bottom. A 20% rental rate increase might help spur some activity there. Now, my only question for the return of the Bay Area's housing market is it going to be on an 18-month timeline or more of a 24-month timeline? But that's good news for the retail world down the road for the return of those guys. Grocery is really where a ton of the action has been. Our panel is going to talk about a lot of specific deals, especially in the South Bay and East Bay and throughout the region that have happened. But let's look at what's really happening here. We've got Walmart, who might be adding as many as 350 stores over the next 18 months. They got a new concept, Walmart Express, which is 15,000 square feet. They got another concept, Walmart Neighborhood, 40,000 square feet. Rapid growth all over the place. They're looking here. They've got deals, a couple of deals done in the South Bay, the East Bay. They're definitely looking through the Central Valley. They're inked some deals. They're coming on strong. But they're not the only players. Certainly Fresh and Easy is still out there. We've got a slew of organic and ethnic-themed chains that are also growing. But we have new players that are getting in on this too. Most of the dollar store chains are starting to add food components. Now, the food components to their stores are going to be a lot like what we see in the drugstores today, where it's mostly canned goods and chips and stuff. But Walgreens has been testing out at Duane Reade in New York and some different urban locations a beefed up selection of fresh foods. They brought a guy over from Fresh and Easy. And in some of their stores, they've been having great success with pre-made lasagnas, pre-made salads, etc. Chances are very strong that they're going to expand that to a lot more markets. Now, I've got people who tell me that CVS is watching that, and if Walgreens is successful at that, CVS is going to do it. 7-Eleven is planning on expanding their fresh food offerings, and 7-Eleven's got about 600 stores in development over the next couple of years throughout the United States. All of these players are reaching for a piece of the pie that hasn't grown very much. And so here's one of the things we're going to see in the year ahead. We're going to see a shakeout in the grocery industry. But I don't want to confuse people and say that just because the new players coming in, that just means doom for the old players. The fact of the matter is that success is still going to be driven a lot by location, because shoppers are still about convenience. But all these new players coming in, and I'll add to that Target, who has added grocery components to all 350 plus of their stores in the United States. All of these players that are coming in, at least most of them, are not unionized. So who's going to be under the most pressure? Who's going to be struggling the most ahead to keep up with price competition? It's going to be smaller chains, regional chains that are unionized. And we're going to see a shakeout. We're going to see more and more mergers and acquisitions. Certainly, we had A&P go bankrupt in the Northeast last year, and they still are closing stores. Delhaize just announced they're closing down their Bloom and about 126 Food Lions in the Southeast. We haven't seen much out west here, except we did see about a year and a half ago, Basha's down in Phoenix declare bankruptcy. But we're going to see a lot of shifting around. We're going to see people selling off concepts. For example, Genuardi's in the Philadelphia area just got sold off. I think you'll see players like Kroger and Safeway possibly looking at some markets where they might want to divest themselves, other markets where they might want to pick somebody up. But there's going to be a bit of a shakeout in the grocery industry ahead. Now, we also want to look at who else is being squeezed in the retail marketplace. It's the guys in the middle. So obviously, I think you probably all have heard that Sears, Kmart's going to look to close 120 stores this year. Well, my gut tells me that's probably going to be the first of a couple of announcements. I've actually had a number of people ask me, do you think Sears is going to go BK this year? No. Fitch did a study, and what they found is Sears has about $250 million in debt coming due this year. And of course, the second they announced the closures, their credit rating got lowered, so their ability to refinance that debt dropped significantly, but supposedly they have enough cash on hand to deal with that. The real problem is they have another $350 million in debt coming due next year. All these are challenges ahead, but again, it's the guys in the middle. This is a list of a number of retailers out there that have large amounts of debt that are pending, who also have relatively low credit ratings. And this is where we're probably going to see trouble ahead. Although most of this stuff, if you look at the dates of these maturing debt issues, are next year or beyond. Now, getting back to the big picture vacancy outlook, again, you see shopping center vacancy only went down slightly, but as much as I've just been focusing on some gloom and doom, retail demand was up significantly throughout the past year. And again, 2 bankruptcies, 15 million square feet. Now, looking ahead, and you see actually the net absorption in terms of who benefited the most was shopping centers. But looking ahead, even with all those challenges for those mid-priced retailers, the failures that we're going to see ahead will return nowhere near the amount of space to the market that we saw last year. There's headwinds, that's for sure. There'll be a lot of space returned to the marketplace. The interesting thing here is if you look at where the real pressure is, it's at a lot of traditional mall retailers. I don't think this is going to impact your Class A malls, certainly the ones that are filled with luxury retail and that can sustain luxury retail. The real challenge ahead in the coming year is going to be vacancy at Class B and C malls. But I actually think the shopping centers, the power centers, will do fairly well. We track demand across the United States. And not just through the publications I do, but through the Chain Links group where we have 60 different offices. We do regular surveys. And we put together essentially the top 10 markets for retail demand in the United States right now. New York's always going to be up there. They just always work out to be near the top. But San Francisco and San Jose came in at 3 and 5. And again, that just wasn't broker opinion. That's what we're tracking as far as active space requirements. So these are things that are really, really positive signs for continued growth in the Bay Area. And if you look at comparative major market vacancy, and I should explain to you, these numbers don't just include shopping centers, but freestanding retail space. San Francisco is behind only New York City. 2.7% vacancy. Again, urban retail has been one of the hot spots for retail expansion. So looking ahead, 2012, the trends I think you need to watch, there's going to be a ton of merger and acquisition activity. And it's not going to be all bad news. Certainly there's plenty of struggling retailers that'll be on the market. There's rumors that Talbot's might get picked up. But there's also up-and-coming chains. And there's plenty of capital that's looking for safe harbor. And I think you'll see a lot of deals going down. Retailers on the way up, retailers on the way down, and then certainly with the grocery store world, there'll be a lot of trading hands and trading places. That shakeout, the interesting thing is, will that result in growth or negative growth? And that's a real challenge because as many of the guys that we see coming in, most of them are smaller format, 20 to 50,000 square feet max. Most of the guys I think that will be closing are going to be more traditional in that 50 to 70,000 square footprint. So this could mean more headaches for landlords as far as demising space. On the whole, though, the good news is that even though demand hasn't crept up, the amount of space that's going to be returned to the marketplace this year will be less. So vacancy will decrease at a much faster pace in 2012, and that's going to lead to rental rate growth at a much quicker rate in most U.S. markets. And again, the retail failures, I think, are going to hit malls more than they're going to hit the power in the neighborhood centers. Now, mom and pops in most markets are still largely on the sidelines, but we are seeing some thawing there. Some of it's franchise-driven, in fact, most of it is, but we are starting to see a slow return. I emphasize the word slow, and it's market by market. We're actually seeing a lot more activity down here in the Bay Area than, say, what my counterparts are reporting to me in Chicago, Houston, number of other places. That being said, one of the challenges we also have to deal with in the coming year is that we still are dealing with a real lack of those space users that are taking 5,000 square feet or less. Right now, it's all restaurants. Now, I don't want to glaze all your eyes over with all of these shopping center statistics. Again, on that memory stick that you have our full retail reports for Northern California, where we break these statistics out in detail, not just market by market, county by county, but by different shopping center type, strip center, regional centers, power centers, you name it. And one of the things we're proud to announce is starting with this quarter, we're switching to a quarterly process. Instead of doing half-yearly reports, from here on out, we're doing quarterly reports. And we've expanded our coverage to include Santa Cruz and Monterey counties. That being said, all of the Bay Area markets have posted very strong growth over the past year, declining vacancy rates. The only places where I do think I need to stop here and kind of fill in the blanks would be Sacramento and the Central Valley, which are kind of big question marks. If you look at the absorption number for Sacramento, it'd probably blow you away, 700,000 square feet of space. How did that happen when the Central Valley seems so challenged? Well, a good chunk of that, almost half of it, is really from one project coming online, Palladio at Folsom. For those of you who don't know the Sacramento area, you might know Folsom from Johnny Cash. Well, it's not your father's prison town anymore. It's a very upscale community that just opened a great lifestyle center. Most of that growth's come from that, but there's been very strong big box growth in the Sacramento area that Jim Tier is going to be talking about in a second. And unfortunately, the Central Valley is still struggling. It's still a negative territory. But again, leasing activity has been on the upswing, so that's some positive news. But again, our full reports are on those memory sticks, and please feel free to drop me a line. I'd love to put you on our mailing list and get you hooked up to our retail newsline publication. And that being said, I'm going to turn things back over to Matt.